point, comparison of the main reasons that I have concluded yet again to stay with GitLab. So this is a tough decision. Actually, I've concluded this before, and I started everybody on GitLab some years ago. When I started SkillStack in 2013, we were all on GitHub, and I read their terms of service, and I had many people who were under 13, and it was clear that they were not going to be able to be on GitHub because the terms of service are rather clear on people under 13 not being allowed to use it, and also that you're not allowed to share accounts, and they're very explicit in their terms of service on that on GitHub. And so that left me in kind of a tough situation because I use GitHub for so many things to host source code, and I believe in it for lots of reasons that I'd talk about someplace else. But because of that, I had to decide whether or not to break their policies, or which I didn't want to do, or if I was going to find an alternative. So when GitLab came out, it presented and immediately kind of it met the need in many ways that we'll get into for my need. But beyond that, I've come to conclude that it's a much better service. It's far superior to GitHub. And the writing's on the wall on that. GitHub would not have had the fire lit under them that they have had over the last 2 years, adding all these things that GitLab has had for more than 5 years, if it had not become a really, really important competitor. There are many, many other providers out there, but particularly one of the interesting ones I just recently found out about is something called SourceHut, which is it's not production yet, but it's kind of caters to hackers. There's no JavaScript on the whole site. It's very clean, but it would look really great in links. And I actually found out about this because of a project called CTerm, which is, I believe, the leading terminal user interface for Golang applications, if you want to make those kind of things. And they migrated from SourceHut to GitLab. And that's part of this story. In January, I had decided that I was done with posting anything public on GitHub, and I made that conclusion for all the wrong reasons. I thought that the people I might be mentoring were going to be not served well by not being found, because GitHub is where recruiters find people. There's no doubt about that. It was where I felt most public libraries in Go and other languages were going to be used. They were the first and still the only provider to have sponsorship. So for open source, you can go there and sponsor. GitLab does not still have that. And they have a much better social atmosphere. They claim sort of to be the Facebook for developers. And so there was more of a sense of community there because you could see things happening, and you can actually follow people on GitHub like you would follow them on Twitter and see what they're doing. And I cannot tell you how many times I have found out about something that has not even been tweeted about yet by just following key developers as they're committing and they're contributing to things. So that's part of being a Prescient technology professional, which I'll just plug that link. skillstack.io/PTP. With Prescient technology professional is somebody who's aware of what's happening. They have a near clairvoyance about what's coming up, and they know what to learn, and they know how to learn it, and they have the skills to learn things just in time. So based on all of that, I was kind of the opinion that GitHub was really the place to be for all things public, and I concluded that if you wanted anything private, or if you wanted to run your own service, then you would use GitLab, which is you can't do with GitHub. And then this last few weeks, Eric S. Raymond, ESR, who's very famous in the open source community for his book, The Cathedral and the Bazaar, was very vocal on the Go news group regarding Go and it being somewhat attacked by Discord. And I noted that he was on GitLab. I then also noted that all of the web pages and source and stuff for Mint are on GitLab. And I ran into the CTerm group that was on GitLab, which is a library, which was really notable to me because that meant that a very, very substantial group of developers had decided GitLab was their home for their software, even though that it meant import dependencies would depend on a GitLab path, a GitLab URL. And to me, that really was the tipping point. And I said, what am I thinking here? Why am I porting all my stuff over to GitHub out of some, concern about getting all the things that I just said? And so based on that, I decided to change my tune and to just reevaluate it yet again. And I found my old documents comparing the two, and I've been very, very vocal on Twitter. I've even, Sid has been very kind in responding to a lot of my tweets, the CEO over there at GitLab. And I absolutely love that company. I don't think there's another company I would rather work for more right now. I'm not in a position to do that. I'm really busy. But if I were a young person and I wanted to work for a really fast-moving company that's making all kinds of differences in the world, that would be a company that I would really work for. And I could not say the same for GitHub, which of course was bought for $2 billion by Microsoft, and I think 2000, I want to say 16 or 17. And so maybe it's 2015. And so, by the way, when that happened, GitLab became really in view because everybody was really concerned with what would happen if Microsoft got a hold of it. Today's Microsoft is not the Microsoft of the 90s by any means. In fact, I really applaud them for a lot of the stuff they're doing. But still, there was a concern. GitHub is proprietary. It's closed source, and now it's owned by Microsoft. What are they going to do with this? In the process, they also bought all of the rights to VS Code. So even though VS Code was an open source project, it did come out of GitHub, and it was built on Electron, which was also built at GitHub, as was the Atom editors. So that put a lot of power in Microsoft's hands. I got to say, that was really brilliant. Whoever made that decision to buy GitHub was a very wise business person. But that left GitLab as the only alternative for someone who wanted a fully open source system, one that had thousands of contributors. I think they were up to 4,000 on one time, who are actively committing to GitLab's core software. And that is really the fundamental distinction between GitLab and GitHub. The other distinctions are important, particularly for you as an individual if you're a developer, but the really big difference between GitLab and GitHub at the business level is how they're positioned and their general view of the world. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that as we go through these points. I'm not gonna be particularly entertaining going through these. I apologize. This is kind of like just get the information out there. So, and then I will be taking questions on stream after this. And just to make a plug, rwxrob.live. That's my YouTube channel. There's links there to our Twitch and to websites and all that. Come on in and talk to us anytime. This will be a video on YouTube. It's likely you'll find it there. But I always have sort of a live studio audience when I'm doing my things. I have to kind of turn them off for a bit because I know they'd be trolling me right now. But we'll come back and we'll take some questions from them afterwards. So let's get to it. We got a lot to cover, but I'm going to try to go as quickly as I can. So MIT open source license, as I mentioned. If you don't know what that means that anybody can use GitLab any way, anytime, anyhow, however they want, and they can even sell it. MIT is one of, if not the most permissive open source license there is, which means that anybody can use it. You could even take GitLab, rebrand it, and sell it. And if you don't believe me, just ask Steve Jobs. That's what he did with BSD, which was released under a similar license called FreeBSD. And that's how we have the Macs that we have today. So this is very, very, very appealing to businesses. And this is the beginning of where we can make a really strong distinction between these two. GitLab, from the beginning, chose to target not just the open source community, but also businesses who would want to bring their software in-house and pay them for extra services on top of that. And I believe I talk about it later down here. Here it is. This idea of having a completely open business, but selling extra services on the side. They have coined the term open core, an open core business model, and that comes up a lot. So they have really championed this idea of enterprise adoption, which puts them in a very good position financially, I believe, because they are catering to to businesses, but also that makes their software available to schools and to tiny mentored communities. In fact, I was able to get a version of GitLab running here that I was able to allow students as young, or mentors people as young as 9, to use without a problem. And there was some performance issues because I didn't have big hardware and there's a Postgres database required. But the idea is that if you want to make a GitLab of your own, you can do it, and you can expand it. You can build on it however you want. And that is a really significant difference. In fact, I believe that is the primary reason that open source champions like ESR, Eric S. Raymond, or the entire GNOME project or the entire Mint project are going with GitLab as opposed to GitHub. GitHub is all closed and proprietary, and nobody knows what's going on under the hood. Sometimes they talk about it, but for the most part, we don't know. All right, so next thing. GitLab accepts, as I mentioned, many community contributions. GitHub does not. GitLab has a full continuous integration, continuous development, DevOps cycle toolchain, they call it. And this is actually their primary marketing. They market a lot on that. They were doing this before anybody else. So GitHub, people were doing it through GitHub, but they were putting Jenkins and all kinds of things, and they were linking things together. But GitLab from the beginning has been able to do that, and they have a very tight container integration with the whole system. So they are much better prepared to deal with the world of DevOps and containers. And in fact, you can do rather involved and complex building by scripting it, essentially, during your commits. So when something commits to the system, you can have it run through a number of tests, and you can even have it call webhooks and trigger other events. And they were the first to do that. GitHub did not have that. And now GitHub does. I wonder why. So in fact, they just added it last year. They're called Actions. But these guys have been doing it a lot longer than them. And so now GitHub's playing catch up. They're doing a good job playing catch up, but they're playing catch up. GitLab, as I said, everything is free. This is something from the beginning. Your user account is free. Your group is free. Group is GitHub's word for that is an organization. You can have subdirectories and everything. Everything on GitLab is free. If you want the other services, including downloading the software and running for yourself, they make their money by selling extra services or by catering to the enterprise and selling support services. So, and that's an oversimplification, of course, but that's what it is. GitHub, for the longest time, and I believe they've actually hurt our world this way. GitHub for the longest time has made organizations expensive for most individual developers. And therefore what you find is that people have been using their free personal accounts to create packages that should never have been associated with a single person. And I believe strongly that GitHub has single-handedly, because of this, promoted the use of individuals' names in core packages that are used all over the internet. And they will eventually grant an organization, but you have to, ask for it, and there's like a process for it, and you got to hope that you get it and that you don't, violate that. And it's annoying. I mean, it's just super annoying. And if you want other people to be in the organization, it's also not free. They have to pay. So in GitLab, everything is just free. The groups are free. They have, they have better permissions in organizing the groups and what they can do. So GitHub can't even hold a candle to GitLab on that part. And it's really clear that GitLab saw that was a problem and said, hey, we're going to do this right. GitLab can be installed at home or on a site, as I mentioned. You cannot install GitHub. GitLab, as I say here, is more likely to be something you would use on the job, mostly because a lot of enterprises do deploy GitLab. To be fair, GitHub does have an enterprise offering. That for a very long time, you had to use their sort of VPN or whatever to use them, and you could not deploy GitHub on site inside the enterprise. But that is now something that they're doing. I don't know if that was a response to GitLab or not. I could be incorrect on that detail, but I do know that GitLab has always been able to do that. And again, GitHub is playing catch up on that front. GitLab is more likely to be used on a job. GitHub is more likely for you to use for hobbies because there's like the social atmosphere going on. GitLab, by the way, had the individual developer statuses long before GitHub had it, and GitHub added that. So Okay, GitLab uses containerized project repos. That means so every repo is a separate container. And GitHub, there are less secure repos that share the same resources. I don't know if this has changed, but the last time I read about this is there. You do not know the extent to which your container, your private container, is living, on disk space next to another one, and to what degree of security separates the two. And that is largely not something you can just ask them. Yeah, this you can actually GitLab. You can study it. You can know it very directly. GitLab has an agile process, progressive architecture. I truly agree with that. They are using a lot of new things. I think they're making a lot of decisions correctly, including fundamentally building on Docker and other containers. And I really believe that might have been the motivation to do GitLab in the first place. GitHub had clearly accrued a lot of technical debt over the years from their choice of using Ruby and whatever else that they built it on way back, in early 2000. And there's just no ripping that out. I mean, that stuff is there. It's been there forever. It was really well done for the time. Don't get me wrong, but it's it's not a thing anymore. It's just this maintenance mode. And so GitLab had the fresh opportunity to build everything from scratch, and they built it on top of the whole containerizing thing, which is a big deal. That also meant, other small things like using, we're going to get to that. So here, new repos push with git push. This is a tiny little detail, but it's a super big one. When you git push with GitLab, it automatically senses that you have a git push, and it will automatically create a new private repo for you automatically. It doesn't, I said that twice, but over here you have to do, it's very annoying actually. You have to go to GitHub, and unless you're using some sort of tool with the API, which is relatively easy to use, you can do it in a few lines of bash code. But if otherwise, you have to go to the website, you have to create the repo, and then you can pull down the repo. But in GitLab, you can just make a repo, do git init, and then git push. And if you do it properly, GitLab will automatically make it for you, and you don't even have to touch the website. So it's those kind of tiny little details that make a really big difference. You can tell that they've given a lot of attention to the workflow of developer, including the GUI. GitLab has a very powerful import, export, and mirroring service integration, including being able to export and import Git and other providers of Git. You can mirror, in other words, you can both pull and push to GitHub. So if you set your key up token up right with GitHub, when you publish something to GitLab, it will automatically replicate and mirror to GitHub. So if you have some code or something that you just would really like to have visibility on GitHub, you can do that. I don't recommend you do that with a library by any means, because the library then now has two, sort of places to get it, and it's probably better to have one authoritative source for that, particularly with all the caching that's going on with modules and stuff now. I'm thinking particularly of specifically of the Go, the new Go caching modules and stuff. So there is no mirroring on GitHub whatsoever unless you code it up, which you can do. I really love GitLab's cleaner view-based interface. Most of their front end is Vue. GitHub's is pretty ancient Bootstrap, and I think it's still that way. GitLab's groups and projects get icons, including animated GIFs. I know that's a small thing, but that's a pretty big deal. This is a small detail that I got to tell you is very valuable. Let me just give you an example. I mean, if I go to gitlab.com and I just pull up skillstack/comp, this is a defunct directory, but I think I deleted it already. And what I'm trying to show you though is that you can see the icons, and you see here you can name the icons, and you can organize them in different ways. So this one, I hope these are still here. So here you go. So see how we have some icons here. You can make some fun little icons, and I don't know if you also noticed, but we're going to talk about this in a second, but you can create subgroups, and not only for better organization of the content in general, but I have Dark Reader on, this way I can't read some of them, but not only does it give you better organization of your repos, which they call projects, but it gives you the ability to very granularly set permissions. So you can have, and they have 3 permissions modes, not just, admin and not. They have like a reviewer permission, which is somebody who can read and deal with all the documentation, but doesn't have access to the source code to be able to change it. Both GitHub and GitHub do have GPG signing for when you do commits, so you can make sure that they actually are coming from somebody who is trusted. So that's something not really. They both have that. You don't get any icon at all on GitHub except for users, and this continues to be something that's very annoying. To think of it though, GitHub does have a better way, I believe, to add a marker for when you want to post your thing. You can customize that. And maybe the GitLab has it, and I haven't found that yet, but that just occurred to me. You can set up a way for your repo to show up nicely on Twitter or Facebook or something, and you can actually customize how that appears. All right. Next, there's a very, very, very powerful web IDE built into to GitLab, and that means that you can go in and you can change what's happening with the editor. So not only do they have the old school editor, so let's say I want to edit this README file, which it says okay, so if I were to edit the README file, I can click on the README file, and I have two options here. On GitHub, you only have the one, and I can click on the fast editor, which is just kind of in line here with syntax highlighting, which I've found to be far more, and this was confirmed by a friend of ours on the stream. The syntax highlighting is far more clued in on GitLab than GitHub has been. So you can do your editing right here and click commit and just have it. In fact, it's so efficient to do that I often introduce web development combining GitLab with a service called Netlify, which we'll talk about in another stream, where you can publish directly. And so we go through, I don't know, like Jen's web design book, and we work on it, and we don't even need to introduce VS Code or any of those things just yet. So the reason I like that is because even though they are becoming dependent and it's rather slow to edit files here, it's still a possibility, and it allows them to know that they can do that anytime from school or wherever they are. But there's another thing here. There's a thing called the Web IDE. There's a little gotcha with this that they actually recently changed. I wish they hadn't, but that I'll tell you about. But other than that, you have a full-blown VS Code-like IDE, and this is you can change. You can customize the view of your IDE and your editor in GitLab, which you cannot do in GitHub. So if you don't depend on a reader and you just want to have sort of a VS Code color scheme of some kind, you can do that. You can change that. It's also not on GitHub. So you can do all of these things here, but when you want, and you can actually drag files into here. You can click upload, and you can put a file into there at any time. Line is you have a web editor that you can use to change things up in there. I'll probably cut all that out. But you can use it. It's just an uploader, okay? And so you can do that. You can do the editor. I don't want to waste more time on that, you guys. So, and I mentioned already, GitLab is a private company. GitHub is owned and operated by Microsoft, even though Microsoft is making great strides in its adoption of open source. So I'm proud to see them doing that. Open core business model. I talked about that. They do everything very with the idea of it being open source first, and then deciding what of that they're going to make money on later by adding extra stuff. I believe they coined that term. GitHub is more of a traditional closed business model. Now we get into some of the business differences. GitLab is 100% transparent to the point where they actually make fun of it in the community sometimes. They literally publish everything. Their financials, I believe even the salaries, although I've never seen that. All of their meetings, all of their internal notes. There's no secrets in this company as far as I can tell. Now that I don't know them that well, and I'm not an insider with that company, but I can tell you they have been really, really transparent. And they're, occasionally they get taken to task. So, for example, their code of conduct, they had some stuff in there where they decided to say, hey, it's not our business whether you use our service for whatever you use it for, and they got really raked over the coals because the culture of this moment is that you should step in and not allow certain people to use your service because we disagree with what they believe in, and I don't want to make this a philosophical debate, but they chose to say we are neutral and we provide a service, and they're not the first. I mean, Google's very famously done that, but they've also created some. It's a big topic. I don't want to get into that, but when they did that, they decided to say, okay, maybe we got the wording here wrong, and so they were very forthright with it. And GitHub, on the other hand, has had zero corporate transparency, and and I'm going to jump ahead here, and that's been pretty scary because there's been several sexual harassment scandals over there, and one of for which, and I don't want to comment on this because I've actually worked a little bit on a project with some of the people that were involved, not personally, but some of the people that were involved were forced to step down. We don't know the situation as to why they stepped down, but they did. And the company GitHub was nearly in bankruptcy when Microsoft bought them. I mean, that's no secret. So, I mean, it was really struggling, and then it kind of came back, right? And GitLab, other than the thing with their code of conduct, which they tried to do as best as they could, is a very tough topic. They've had a pretty clean business history as far as I know. If somebody knows anything different than that, I'd love to know. But in both cases, I just really feel closer to the GitLab community better. I feel like it's the kind of company that I would want to work for. Something that we skipped here is really, really, really important. GitLab promotes a work from home environment. I won't link it to the video, but I strongly recommend you take a moment to go link it to their recruiting video where they actually show them in, I believe it's Greece or Monaco, and they're having one of their all hands where they get together. And it's remarkable. I mean, they promote a very, very work from home. Oh boy, sorry for that. They promote a very, very work from home sort of situation. And so GitLab has had a very strong remote work from home kind of thing. And they employ people all over the world, which is another point of controversy, because what do you pay them, right? Do you pay them all the salary for their country? And so because of these rather difficult challenges which they are taking on, they have been the subject of a Harvard Business Review, which is looking at them, I believe, as a model for how more enterprises are going to work going forward. The idea that you have to go, work inside of a hermetically sealed happy town, as Silicon Valley pokes fun at Google, is kind of fading. The idea, it's not sustainable, first of all. And, it's being in person is definitely value into that. But our worldwide workplace is going to demand that we figure out how to work remote. And I worked 10 years from IBM remote, went into the office 5 times or so. And so I believe that GitLab as a company has more of a clue than GitHub. Now, there are a lot of people that work remote at GitHub, from what I understand, and obviously from what you read on Twitter and stuff. But they are still, they have very much a center you can go visit and everything. And so here's the real big one. GitHub, obviously, since it was the first to do this, has 10 million or so legacy users as of 2019, when there's like 800,000 users on GitLab. So, but I want to make a note here. I used to think that this was enough reason to keep all your public stuff on GitHub, and I no longer do, because what I'm finding, and this is my impression, is that the users who are on GitLab are higher quality users. And I know that's going to get all kinds of hate from people, but I find when the people that I run into are more informed, they're making a much more informed decision. And frankly, they're making decisions that are based on reasons other than, well, what is everybody using? And so they're choosing it based on many of the reasons that I've outlined here. And I find that very refreshing. That's something that at some point I actually want to, I want to emulate. And I found myself giving into the pressure, like, well, all the recruiters are getting people off of GitHub because that's where all the talent is. Well, you know what? If your recruiter is going to, if you need to have a recruiter find your stuff on GitHub to get a job, you have bigger problems. I mean, really, you got bigger problems, right? You should be documenting why you feel like your stuff is better because it's on GitLab, and you should be able to justify the reason and very articulately describe, well, oh yeah, right, yeah, GitHub, yeah, how about their CI/CD? Can you do this and this and this? Well, they have actions. Okay, well, how about this? Can they do this? If you are more able to defend your position on GitLab when you do encounter someone who's going to hire you, I feel they're going to be more inclined to hire you because they're going to say, wow, this guy really understands the differences, and he's really like thinking about all the angles here. He's not just using what everybody uses because that's what everybody uses. And then I have kind of a fun little thing. I actually really like the Fox logo, especially the animated one. And the Octocat, gotta tell you, I've never understood it. It's cute. They dress it up in all kinds of different ways. I'm like, what is this thing? And I know it's probably based on, like an anime. It was made by the same guy apparently who made the Twitter logo, and he just said, oh, this would be a cool logo. But I mean, the Fox logo is just so much cleaner. To me, the Fox logo, it really kind of just is just kind of icing on the cake. It really says we are serious, we're about business, we have a great logo, and we're fun too, and we're kind of sneaky. So I know it's like over analyzing all this stuff. Like, oh, you're analyzing logos at the end. Yeah, well, whatever. It's just a fun thing to talk about. I'm going to go ahead and end the video there, and I'll probably have to clip it quite a bit. I realize this is an extremely controversial topic. I am not afraid of controversy, and I'm not afraid of heated debate, and as long as it remains respectful. So if you have any reasons to disagree with what I have to say here, I'd rather not bring anyone else in the conversations and other sources, other source host providers. And there's strong argument against not using one of these services at all, right? Why don't you put it on your own system, or Nextcloud, or Gitty, or anything that you can run on your own site. Or not just plain old Git repos, right? I'd rather not discuss that right now. Really, right now, I want to make a decision between one of these two mainstream providers. And if anybody has any new information that I haven't covered here, I'd be happy to talk about that. So I'm going to go ahead and end the video now. And but I will be adding some comments, taking some comments and looking at the chat now. And that I will leave that in the video, but it's going to be much less formal from here on out. So if you'd like to check out, come on and say hi to us. Otherwise, I'm going to turn to the chat now. And let's see what y'all got to say. You're full of it. All right. So going up here, I've got to scroll back a little bit. From government's things. Ugh. Well, I'm sold. I know. I had to put that one in there for fun, Scream. Okay, so let's see. No Perforce. No, that's another provider. If you're serious about pen test, okay, that's another thing. Okay, nice background. Let me see if I wish I could figure out a way to scroll a little bit easier in HexChat. I like GitLab, but I think GitHub is better for discoverability. That's the common perception. And I completely agree with that. If you want to be discovered, then you're going to be discovered through GitHub. If that's your greatest fear, right? I mean, if that's what you're working on. But I've seen so many really capable technologists just thumb their nose at that fear that I want to be them. I don't care about discoverability as much as I can, because there's other ways to be discovered besides GitHub. To me, the main appeal for me initially for GitLab were the free private repos, but GitHub has them now too. Well, yeah, they only have them because they had the pressure. And by the way, they're not free. They have it for private for you. Your organization still has to pay. And so if you want, they still are promoting the use of private individual repos for everything, which I really disagree with. I think that had GitHub from the beginning been more open and allowed free repos for organizations rather than using that as part of their business money, their monetization, that we would have been much better off, because people would have organized repos based on organizations and it would have put names in them properly. And now we're all locked into, so-and-so's, library. And so I actually strongly disagree that they're free, because they're only free for private individuals. They're not free for organizations. And that's a big deal. And by the way, their cost is pretty hefty. And I was subscribed. To full disclosure, I was a subscriber. I paid my $7 a month for at least, in fact, I just turned it off 2 days ago. I must have paid it for, 6 years, 7 years? Because I wanted private repos. And, GitHub had them all along. So, let's see. Problem with GitHub is the fact that Microsoft owns it. Big corporate interests are antithetical to FOSS, the free open and source software. I completely agree with that. A lot of people don't need any other reason besides that. I'm shocked how many people, when they find out GitLab is open source, decision is made. They could care less about some of the other advantages. And I am more along that line now all the time. All right, so today's Microsoft is almost worse. I don't know if today's Microsoft is worse or not. I would love to hear the reason for that conclusion, Scream. I think Microsoft's embracing of Linux and some of the stuff that they're doing is actually better for the industry, but there's other things they might be doing that are not as good. So I don't know what those things are, but what they're embracing open source, and I don't believe it's like embrace whatever destroy. Adopt, embrace, destroy. I don't think that's the thing that they're doing. I don't believe that. All right. I wouldn't be surprised if they're data mining the code so AI can do suggestions, write the code. I'm not surprised of that either. In fact, I would strongly think that they are doing that. There's probably something in their terms of service that allows them to do that. And that level of connection with the developer base is huge. And if you look at, the race for the future is quantum and cloud and AI. And then, if you literally have everyone's source code, you're already at an advantage. And I'm not comfortable with any company having that. I want to be able to move my stuff off if I need to. And you can do that with Git and GitHub. You can take it off any time. But if I have a package that, thousands of people are dependent on, I would rather go with the service where, if it's public, it's getting mined anyway. And that's a given, right? I know for a fact that there are services that are not publicly known. Actually, I can't disclose who, but I had a parent who works at the upper level with an organization that regularly AI mines all of the data and all of the users on GitHub and provides a list of the top picks for recruiting. So I know that exists because I've heard somebody talk about it, and this particular company sounded like they are very picky with who they approach about who they sell that information to, and they don't make it widely public. So I've had two other recruiters who are parents, technical recruiters, say with great enthusiasm, "Oh, we recruit off GitHub." So the discoverability thing is the thing. But I believe that it shouldn't be the only thing. And I also think it's actually one of the smaller reasons to use it, in my opinion. So the code on GitHub, let's see, they are stupid if they aren't. I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, they're stupid if they're aren't mining it. I would think they would be. They paid a lot of money for it. I'm happy GitLab did a 180 on the telemetry stuff they were pushing. Yes. Oh, thank you, M10, for telling me about that. I totally forgot about that. They were tracking telemetry for a while, and because people hate being monitored without a consent. Yep. Yes, thank you so much for telling me about that. But again, that's another case. I've forgotten about that. I remember hearing about that. I remember thinking, wow, they listen to the community. And this is the thing about GitLab. They really, really listen. I get the impression GitHub does not listen. The only thing GitHub listens to is competition and money. And there's good people working there. Don't get me wrong. I work particularly, there's a lot of good people in the education center, and I don't believe GitLab has an education department. GitHub does, and I worked with them for quite a long time, actually. And so there's good people over there with good intent. But yeah, let's see. And of course they are because of IntelliSense things, right? Okay. Rob always thinks of us as trolls. Me chat, me troll. No, better users versus legacy users. Yeah, you're laughing at that one. I knew I was going to be, beat up over that one. That's been my experience. And I use the comparison a lot to the .io domain in probably 2012, 2013. When the .io domain came out and you had to pay like $500 a year to get one, there were like Wired articles on how awesome it was, and to just go through all of the .io domains. This is way before Agario and all that. And it was true. The IO domain and the people who knew about it and the people who used it were cream of the crop. I mean, there were some great applications. There were either full-blown applications that were finished or they were coming up. And so there was this cultural attraction by a particular type of technologist for the IO domain. And when I discovered that, I was like, no, man, I don't care how much it costs. I'm getting a skillstack.io domain. And that was the end of it. Of course, the price came down to like $30-$40 a year. And there's all the domains in the world now out there. But the point of that story is that the users, when you sense, and over time you can start to develop a sense of this, when you're following enough people, you can kind of get a sense of what the really clued in people are thinking is cool and what they're doing and what they're not telling anybody that they're doing. They're just doing it. And so, that's why I use the example of Eric S. Raymond using GitLab. By the way, one of the ways to get to follow this kind of thing is to go to places where you're not going to find them, or go to places where you will find them, as opposed to like Reddit. There's good people there too, but there's there's better sources for that. So my sense of it is that I kept finding these really, really supremely awesome developer teams, and they were choosing to use GitLab. And by the way, some of y'all, or you might even be on my stream. I mean, I've had a few people on my stream who I discovered were using GitLab, and after already having met them and looked at their, kind of gotten to know their capacity, I was like, oh my God, this person actually knows about GitLab and is using it and wouldn't dream of using GitHub. And so it is a little bit of a popularity thing. It's like, do I want to be one of the cool kids or not? You know what I mean? I don't mean cool. I mean, do I want to be one of the clued in kids or not? And so that's why I'm doing this, because I feel like I owe everybody an apology since January, when I've been pushing everybody over back to GitHub here in my community, saying, well, we got to have kind of both of them. We need this for private and enterprise, but we also need to, for discoverability, like MTM says, for discoverability, we need to put all our public stuff on GitHub. And that was my line in the sand. That was my policy in January. And that was a change, because I had been GitLab all that time. And I ported like 50, you guys have seen me, I ported 50 repos over, and I'm like, God damn. And then this happens this week, and I was super conflicted. I was like, I think I might have made a mistake. I think I might have overreacted in January. And so I've given it a lot of reflection. And whenever I do that, I try to share it so that, y'all can take me to task over it or maybe benefit from it. So that's why. And then there's the fun one, the nice animated fox logo versus the lame Octocat logo. Yeah, and that's just fun. I mean, they're both cute. There's a lot of talent involved with both of them. Platform governance things, yes. Individual names give vanity benefits. Yes, they do. I think the individual names thing was, I actually reconsidered that because of the discoverability thing. I was like, man, I made some pretty cool stuff here. Why isn't my stuff getting pulled up, blah, 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 blah. Why don't I have, it's because I had done the right thing, and I had organized them properly. And so now I have even on GitHub, I have 9 organizations, and, and I have like 5 or 6 organizations on GitLab. My initial reaction is to create an organization for something and put everything under the organization, because I just feel like that has more sustainability. And that was a mistake in some sense, because I did it a lot. I overdid it. There's some things that I now am okay with just owning straight up and just saying, yeah, this is my library. If you want to use it, use my library. But I was overly concerned with usability long term, and I think my years at IBM kind of burned that into my brain. So I don't have any public repos because I have OCD when it comes to my creations. Well, I will tell you what, so probably 90% of my stuff is private. And, it's always build that repo, especially when you have an API that does it. And then, in fact, I'm going through a massive cleanup right now. And it's painful, but it needs to be done. I mean, there's people like Sidney Sorhas, he's got thousands of repos. He's fully supported by his open source contributions. I can't imagine him trying to change his stuff over. He's an NPM guy, a Node guy. I don't want to ruin my reputation with unpolished code. Yeah, me too. I am that way now. You got to understand too, private repos cost money. So for the first 3 years here, anybody who was old enough who had a repo was also putting out Hello World. And I look back and think about that. I look back at that now, and if you combine that with discoverability, I'm like, oh my God. In fact, some of them are old and they're about to go to college now. And I'm like, clean up your repos, because it's all a bunch of random Hello World story games in Python. I'm like, no, dude, this is your profile. And because it was created before there were private repos, there's a bunch of leftover stuff there, because we don't ever clean it up, just like our closet or something. So, so I'm taking the opportunity to do this. The one thing you really should take into account is that anything that you publish that's public is going to reflect on you and going to become a part of your professional portfolio. So you should publish it as private. The problem is you don't ever get back to polishing it to make it. So as developers, we all need to take a few projects and finish them. I'm speaking to myself. Finish those projects before you move on to a next one. Finish one. Get it to a point where it's released, and then work on something else. Don't start 1,000 projects and buy 200 domain names. I'm kind of describing myself here. And not finish all of them, have a million things working in the pot. By the way, to be fair, that's how artists work. That's how my wife works. She's working on like 20 art pieces all at the same time. So, but so we got to start focus on finishing. Learn from me and start hating your own skills so much. The public scorn is very real. Code exhibitionism. Just kidding. I'm not that bad. I'm sure. No, dude, you've already corrected how many times my regular expressions? I'm impressed. I write a lot of code, but it's just for myself unless I'm helping someone else. Yeah. And me too. And that's one of the reasons I like, it's one of the reasons too that I really like GitLab, because I can just make a directory and do git push and boom, I got a repo done. Don't even have, it's already defaulted to private. It's already created. As long as my keys are set up properly, I have a repo. I don't even have to touch the website. What's your GitHub? My GitHub is RWXROB, and my GitLab is RWXROB. So it's in the contact portion of the video. Polarami said, I got to keep up with coding skills. And I nearly said, well, sub to Acerbic then. Yeah. He's keeping up. No, I'm asking you guys on stream, not Rob. Rob can't see our text. Okay, GitLab have dark themes for code blocks. They do. Yep. That feature alone is enough for me. Yep, that's enough for Raritan too. I don't know if he's on tonight, but that's one of his big things. Marshall too. We have another person here who's like, I ain't using it because he likes dark mode for his editor over there. Let's see. Bob has sent a link. Oh, he sent links to my GitLab and stuff. Appreciate that. Oh wow, PayPal even. Yeah, I have not gotten anything on that yet. Wait, I didn't mean the kappa invalidated. Okay. With my streaming frequency is fair. Let's see. What operating system is that? Widmog, welcome. I'm actually running Linux, if that's what you're asking. Am I still streaming? I guess I'm still streaming. Let me go check my OBS. Yep, I am. So I'm running Linux. And let's see. App idea, debate heater. In a Siri, Alexa, etc. app that listens in onto voice emotions level and interjects with phrases. But what about X? Controversial pitches to keep the ball rolling. That's a great idea, Cervic. Sounds like something from Silicon Valley. Yes, it was. The party got stale, Alexa exclaims. Eugenics could work. Oh, you're so demented, Acerbic. Censoring people you don't agree with is very toxic, because you can't have freedom when you put chains on some people based on your own personal moral bias against them. Oh, okay. I mean, you should be welcoming to people, not attacking them. Am I attacking? I hope I'm not attacking. If it sounds like I'm attacking people, I'm sorry. That didn't mean to. Maybe we need to start putting up Garbo PHP to make their AI dumb. Embrace, extend, extinguish. Embrace, extend, extinguish. I knew that was going to come up. There are Google captchas on GitLab. Are there now? I didn't know about that. Shred a piece. Are there? I don't remember seeing those. I do not be abused for training Google's AI, nor do I. I'm sorry. That was that last. I'm going to go back. This was 2210. Just let me remember, and I'll go back to. You said that GitLab chose to be welcoming. That's what I commented on. Oh, right. I don't. That's a really, really tough topic, and I don't want to make light of it. I don't want to say that they even did the right thing. I'm not saying they did the right thing. I am saying that they were transparent about it, and that they listened. And they made a decision based on that. And quite frankly, this is not a dodge. I do not have enough information on the situation to really think through my position on that whole thing. It's extremely controversial, and I want to form a better opinion before I share it publicly. I mean, I tend to think that the more, having been Mormon, the more commandments you have, the more space between the commandments there is to figure out a way to break the commandments. Do you know what I mean? Well, I didn't commit adultery. I blah 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 blah. So I'll just give up my position on that a little bit. That I'm very, very conflicted. I'm very conflicted on that. I think corporations need to be more responsible to support basic human rights and all that kind of stuff. I believe in that strongly. But when you're dealing with people who believe so differently across the board on different things, it's extremely controversial, and it's a much bigger problem. So the only thing I'll say about GitLab is it's not so much praise for their position as much as it's praise for how they handled it. At least they talked about it. The tracking thing, when they got called out, they're like, oh, that's actually a bad idea. Let's fix that. So I don't know. I'm sorry to devolve this into a debate. I don't mean it to. Either you have freedom or you don't. It's not that hard. Become free is abandoning control, which comes with downsides, but it's worth it. I mean, this thing, that whole thing came about because of all, because the employees, because, I'm just completely talking out of the way. I have no idea what I'm talking about. So I don't even want to talk about it until I get more research on the topic, because I believe GitHub did something similar. I think they actually stepped their foot down. I don't know for sure. Maybe y'all know. But that's an issue. If you choose to be non-welcoming to some people you don't like, that will only cause drama. Right. And think about how huge that issue is, right? So what, let's, okay. So Mark